A few days ago, HBO announced that they have finally cast the golden trio of Harry, Ron and Hermione for the upcoming Harry Potter TV series. So today I'm going to be diving into something that I've found pretty exciting to plan, to be honest with you, and an idea that I've had for quite a long time. I'm going to be planning out my dream plans and structure for the Harry Potter series, episode by episode, book by book, series by series, starting from book 1 all the way to book 7. So today I thought I'd start naturally with the very first episode of the very first series, and yeah, from there, video by video, go episode by episode, and also just give some ideas that I have along the way as to how I see the series progressing as the books get longer and longer, and potentially the seasons get longer and longer too. So first things first, it has officially been confirmed that season 1 will consist of 8 episodes, which I think is okay because, you know, the book isn't that long. At the end of the day, the first 2 and even 3 books really are children books, so they are a lot shorter. But I do believe that as the books get progressively longer and longer, hopefully we will get longer and longer series. So, you know, by the time we get to Order of the Phoenix and even Goblet of Fire before that, hopefully we're going to be maybe hitting, I don't know, 10 episodes per season. But for now, let's just focus on episode 1 of season 1, titled, like the very first chapter of the books, The Boy Who Lived. This episode will essentially cover the first 3 chapters of Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. That's Philosopher's Stone, not Sorcerer's Stone, sorry to my American friends. I think that makes sense because yes, 3 chapters is a lot of ground to cover, but I think in the context of an hour-long episode, I think you do have enough time really to make it work. Plus, obviously, as the series gets longer and longer in later seasons, we're going to be probably cramming in like 3, 4, 5 chapters into an episode sometimes. So I think it's a reasonable amount of time to cover for this episode 1. We'd start right at the beginning, just like in the books. We would get our fully fleshed out introduction to the Dursleys before Dumbledore and McGonagall arrive at Privet Drive. Obviously, this was left out in the movies, but I think it's essential to get this character development in early. We'd see Uncle Vernon and Aunt Petunia starting their day. We'd see little baby Dudley throwing his cereal at the walls in a tantrum, really building up that character development for them. We'd then follow Uncle Vernon on his way to work, noticing all of the things around him, including the cat reading a map, all the people dressed up oddly, and of course the old man bumping into him outside his work and promptly hugging him. I really want to emphasize Vernon's discomfort for anything out of the ordinary, just like again in the books. Think about quick shots of him noticing these things and getting more and more paranoid with everything that he's seeing, hearing things on the news and all of that stuff. Again, just kind of building that understanding of how much he hates anything out of the ordinary. This is especially prevalent later on in the episode when he nearly crashes the car after Harry tells them about the dream that he had about a flying motorcycle. It just really builds again that character development, which I think is going to be so important going on to the future of the series. We then have the jump to that evening with Dumbledore and Professor McGonagall arriving at Privet Drive, and to be honest with you, I think this would go very similar to the movies. I think they did a good job, but I think one thing I would like to see would be that quirkiness to Dumbledore maybe coming out a little bit more. I particularly like the scene with him offering the sherbet lemon to McGonagall and her being disgusted by the thought. I think just something like that, just to build the characters a little bit more, a little bit early on. And of course, Hagrid's entrance is iconic, just like it is in the movie. Again, to be honest with you, I don't think that you need to change anything much with this whole scene. I think basically pretty much reshoot it. Then we have the huge time jump to Dudley's 11th birthday. We'll get to see him with his presents, preparing for his zoo trip, especially the Dursleys panic when they realise Mrs. Fig can't take Harry in for the day. Now I think this is a perfect opportunity to introduce Piers Polkiss. I know he's not a major character or anything, but I do just think it's important again to see this character development, this different side to Dudley, seeing the juxtaposition between how he acts with his parents and how he acts with his friends, and yeah, as I mentioned before, just getting that character development. You know, some of the scenes with the Dursleys in the book are some of my favourite scenes, and I'm hoping that we get to see most of them, if not all of them, in the TV series. 3 words: ton, tongue, toffee. Then, of course, we get the whole sequence of the trip to the zoo. We see Dudley and Piers getting more and more unbearable. We get to see Harry's subtle enjoyment of being out for the day. And, of course, as I mentioned before, Uncle Vernon nearly crashing the car when Harry tells him about his dream. The escape of the snake is obviously key. Pretty much, again, how it is in the movie. I think they did a great job. But remember, the snake is a boa constrictor from Brazil, not from Burma. And even though we do have a lot more time with the TV series, I do still suggest trimming the fat a little bit here. We don't really need to see Dudley and Piers' extravagant stories about how the snake tried to wrap himself around Piers. We don't need to see about the zookeeper blabbering about where did the glass go. Just like in the movie, we just kind of focus a lot more on Harry and him just kind of shocked and surprised about how this could have happened. We then move into what I would call the third sequence of the show. So far, we've had the Dursleys, essentially the prologue, and McGonagall and Dumbledore and Hagrid in Privet Drive. I think that's sequence 1. And then you'd have sequence 2, which is Dudley's birthday and the whole trip to the zoo and everything that happens there with the snake. And then obviously by the time they get home, then that would probably be another advert break after that. So then, as I mentioned, we get into sequence 3, which is the letters from No One chapter. Again, the movie actually did a really great job with this whole sequence, in my opinion. What we would like to see is just things getting even more ludicrous. I especially like the scene with Harry coming downstairs to try and intercept the postman before treading on Uncle Vernon, who's sleeping by the door in a sleeping bag. We'd obviously still have the iconic scene with the letters coming through the chimney. Again, very similar to how it is in the movie. I would then also like to include the whole sequence of them driving to the hotel, staying the night there, only to find a dozen letters at the front desk when they wake up the next morning. Again, I think it's just a really good way of highlighting how Harry just can't escape his magical destiny. Finally, we arrive at the climax of the episode, with Uncle Vernon borrowing the boat and a suspicious long package from a fisherman, and the Dursleys and Harry travelling via the boat to the hut on the rock. And here is where I was faced with my first big decision. Do we end the episode in the same way that chapter 3 of the book ends, with Hagrid arriving and knocking on the door, or do we go a little bit further? We all know that the best TV shows often end with a dramatic cliffhanger, so you are desperate to tune in for the following week. Obviously, a giant knocking on the door of the cabin is a cliffhanger, but I feel like we could do a little bit better for the first episode of the series. So we would have Hagrid breaking the door down, intimidating the Dursleys, of course tying Uncle Vernon's rifle into a knot. The climax of the episode would build and build and build, with Uncle Vernon and Petunia getting more and more panicked, with Uncle Vernon eventually shouting at Hagrid to stop, before Hagrid leaves us with our dramatic cliffhanger and says the iconic line, "Harry, you're a wizard." Cue the music and the credits of episode 1. So that's my plan for episode 1. A tight and exciting introduction to the series following the first 3 chapters of the book, with just a smidge of chapter 4 as well. It mixes humour, tension, of course magic, and it ends with that big bang and cliffhanger. So what do you think? Do you have any ideas for how episode 1 should go? You can let me know in the comments below, and of course don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll be back next time to plan out episode 2 of Harry Potter Season 1.